6:20. We do have a quorum. I will now call this evening's meeting of the Zoning Appeals for the City of Florence to order. First item on this evening's agenda is the approval of minutes from regular meeting April 27th, 2023. These have been submitted to the members of the board with ample time to review. Are there any changes or amendments to April 27th, 2023 board minutes? Are there any changes or amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I so move we adopt the minutes as written.
Okay, we being none, we'll entertain a motion to approve it.
Right.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. The next item on this evening's agenda is appeal number BZA-2023-07, and this is a variance request, a request for variance from the setback and parking requirements for a parking residential lot, and location is 500 West Pine Street and 405 Warley Street. Tax map number 90075-01-024. Owner of record 500 West Pine Street LLC. The applicant is Fernando Pina, and the zoning district is Neighborhood Conservation 6.2 in the Timrod Park Overlay District. And the board will now hear from city staff.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. This parcel is located at the corner of Pine Street, West Pine Street and Warley Street, and it is in the Timrod Park Overlay District. It is a single parcel, but it has two distinct buildings on it. It is zoned NC 6.2, which permits single-family detached and two-family attached buildings. So duplexes are a permitted use in this zoning district. The future land use for it is neighborhood conservation, so it is in keeping with that as well. The property card indicates that the two buildings that first there was a 3,600 square foot house built in 1938, and right next to it, I mean literally right next to it, was about a 1,400 square foot two-family building built in 1937. So the duplex was built first, and then a year later the house. And the house has traditionally been used as a duplex. We're not sure when it was actually converted to a duplex, but has historically been used as 2 units, and the property was appraised as a 4-unit property. The housing type for duplexes, they'd both be considered over-under duplexes because they are not side-by-side units. One's on the ground floor, one's on the second floor. So lot dimensions for those require, if you were to build a duplex new, you would have to have an 8,000 square foot parcel with a minimum 80-foot width, and setbacks would have to be 15 feet from the front, 5 feet from an interior side, 10 feet from a street side, and 15 feet from the rear. That's if you were building brand new. Because these are pre-existing, they were considered conforming at the time of the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance. But it does specify that you can, in that district, you can have a duplex per parcel. And since technically now you've got 4 units on one parcel, the way to mitigate that issue is just for the owner to subdivide the parcel into 2 parcels. And obviously he cannot meet those setbacks, and so that's why we're here tonight. He's asking for variance from the setbacks. As you can see from both the aerial and the plat, the 2 buildings are very close together. The new parcel line would probably be roughly where that red line is. The surveyor would figure out exactly where to put it. There's a fence around the backyard of the house, which you'll see in a photograph in a moment here. So the variance is requested. They both meet for the front setback, which is only 15 feet. The house, which is the 500 West Pine, does meet the interior side setback and the street side setback, but it has only about a 3-foot rear setback if once that new property line is drawn. The 405 Worley, which is the duplex, is like only 1 or 2 feet from what is the interior side right now. But what would become its rear, it's right up against it, so it would be 0. And then the lot areas of the new parcels would be significantly smaller than the required, not for the big one, but for the smaller one, for the duplex, would be about 65% smaller than what would be required if it were a new development. And then the ordinance requires 2 off-street parking spaces per living unit. So with 2 living units per building, each one would need 4 parking spaces. There is space for 4 off-street parking spaces attached to the house. Traditionally, parking for the duplex, and it has been used as a duplex as well, has been on the street, and in that section of Worley Street, it is not posted as no parking. And I spoke with the police department, and on-street parking is legal as long as it's not specifically posted against it, and as long as vehicles do not obstruct traffic. So here are some site photos. The front of 500 West Pine Street is on the upper left. The side on Worley Street of 500 West Pine with the driveway showing the 4 possible parking spaces that could be either for the 2 units in that house or, depending on how many cars everybody would have, possibly for some for the Worley Street building. The lower right shows the location of what would be the rear parking lot, or rear property line, to the white building, which is the 405 Worley Street. As you can see, it's right up against the property line. And then the picture on the left is the duplex. From the front, you can see that there's really no space for off-street parking in the front lot, in the front of it. And then the distance between 405 and the house next to it, 407 Worley, and then the distance between the 2 buildings and the new property line would probably run approximately along that sidewalk, along that fence there. So the findings of fact, the variance would not be contrary to public interest. Adherence to the terms of the ordinance would result in an inability of the owner to use the building at 405 as it has been previously used and historically used. The use as proposed has historically been in place prior to the current owner purchasing the property, but he did purchase it intending as a 4-unit property. The 2 structures were constructed 85 years ago at a time when setbacks were obviously not taken into consideration, and they've been historically utilized as, actually the back building was used traditionally as a triplex, but because it was vacant for more than 2 years, it cannot be resumed as a triplex, but it could be as a duplex, since triplexes are not permitted in that zoning district. And then most lots of record have 1 principal structure. This one does have 2 that have been there the whole time. And adherence to the ordinance would result in the owner's inability to use the building as it's historically been used. And they have been in place since the 1930s. And again, these are the traditional uses they've had historically. So they would not substantially affect the character of the district. So that concludes staff's report. And the applicant is here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lane. The board, is there any questions for city staff from the board at this time? No. Any questions? Yes, ma'am, I do have a question. So, how many variances is he, if it's 2 properties, is he's asking for, 4 variances from the rear, the side?
3. I've listed them, the building setbacks, the lot area and width, and parking.
Okay, all right, I'm so sorry. You said you listed them. All right, number 1 was the what now?
They're up on the screen.
On the screen. Okay, that was page.
It's not laid out exactly like that on.
I think it's page 8.
Gotcha, thank you, sir.
But it just would be the setbacks for the lot area for the new parcels, and then the parking.
Okay, so in each Each one, they're asking for two of them. So for the Pine Street and the Warley Street, each one of those would be two separate properties, and they're asking for a variance on the rear and the side of each of the properties. So
Yes.
okay, and then you add in the parking. So the parking in the on the house, I guess that was Warley Street. It looks like it.
The 500 West Pine Street could accommodate all four on site. So that's the pink house.
And that's the one that is a single house right now, right?
No, it's a duplex now.
Okay, and the other house is a single house?
They're both operating as duplexes.
They're both operating. Okay, gotcha, okay. And what was the triplex problem?
The white building in the rear was historically used as a triplex. There were 3 units in there, but triplexes are not permitted in the NC 6.2. So when it became unused for several years because it became a nonconformity that could not be resumed. It could only come back as a duplex, not as a 3 unit.
Okay, so that building right now currently is a duplex?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the large house
Is also a duplex. Apparently,
is also a duplex?
Yes, apparently a previous owner did construct a second unit on the second floor.
Okay, and to make that in compliance with code, he needs to get this variance where it splits the property in 2?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because each of them has to have its own parcel. And so to divide this lot into 2, because of the location of the buildings, it just needs a variance saying that he can divide it with the given setbacks and that would be allowable.
Okay, and if he did not get this variance, it would
Then he
be
would
not
not
in
be
the
able
code
to use
then.
the second building at all.
Okay, the second building, which
The
is
white
the one
one.
on Warley Street or Pine Street?
The Warley Street one.
The Warley Street, he would not be able to use it whatsoever unless
Correct.
he reverts maybe the Pine Street into one place or.
He still wouldn't be able to use it. He would not be able to use it at all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lamb, thank you. Is there any other questions for city staff at this time? Okay, there being no questions, the board now will hear from the applicant, which he is here today tonight. If you come on in, we'll swear you in first before you talk. Do you promise the testimony you're about to give tonight is the truth and the whole truth? Okay, thank you, sir. You may continue with your testimony to the board of zoning appeals.
Excuse me, is your microphone on?
There we go.
Okay. Thank you for being here today to hear this. We're not very familiar with the ordinances per se, but we did purchase the property to invest in the neighborhood. We have both of the homes contribute to the neighborhood. They're both vacant for over 2 years. There were homeless people that broke into the homes and was bringing a lot of negative things to the neighborhood. Anyway, we invested in the property and with the intent to have 4 units, and we did a lot of work to it to make it a very nice property, beautiful place, and we'd like to continue to be able to use the property. And, asked you to consider that. I think it would definitely contribute to the neighborhood if you allow us to use it. If not, it's vacant property morally.
Thank you, sir. Hold on one second. Is there any questions for the applicant from members of the board at this time? I do have a question for you. Did you apply for this, or is this code enforcement?
Actually, we were unaware that we did not comply. Brought to us, to our attention, but unfortunately, we then learned about some of these ordinances. So that's what we're applying to be able to comply.
you do these properties to rent them out. And how long have you currently owned this property?
We've had this property for maybe a year and a half or so. I think it was December of 2021 when we purchased it. It took us 6 months or longer to get this habitable.
And currently, do you have the both duplexes fully
No,
occupied?
no, we have 2 tenants on 500 West Pine Street, and since we found out about the ordinance, they comply with Worley Street is vacant.
Do you have any other properties that you rent out, or is these your only? You do have other properties in the city? Okay. Are they residential as well?
Most of them are residential. Yes.
The reason I asked, you first brought up that you wasn't familiar with the codes, and the reason I do ask, they do have a codes where if you have a certain amount of residential tenants in the city, they make you go the extra step and have
Correct.
further checks and whatnot. Are you familiar with that?
Rental registry?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you a part of that?
Yes.
Okay. And so that being said,
Yeah,
that
that may have been maybe the reason how learned about not being
great. Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, there being none, the chair will now thank you. Sir? Oh, yeah, yes. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Y'all can come on up one by one, and we'll swear you in, and by all means. Thank you, sir. Amen. Yes, ma'am. Before you start your testimony, we're just going to swear you in. The following testimony you're about to tell us is the whole truth.
It is.
Okay. All right. You may proceed. Thank you, sir.
My name is Andrew Lisby. My wife and I live at the house right next to properties at 502 West Pine. We have owned this property since bought it in 2006. And if I could give you a little bit of history, whenever we bought the property, the house at 500 West Pine was owned by Mrs. Lawmaker, and I think she also rented out the property at 405 Worley Street, and it's only been in the last several years that the property at 405 Worley Street has been vacant. It has traditionally been it's traditionally been apartments. I'm not sure how many, probably at least 4. Whenever the lady, Miss Betty Fowler, she was an elderly lady, and she had passed away a couple years ago. And after she died, like her sons had taken in some renters, but it's only been, I'd say, in the last several years that after her sons had disposed of the property that the apartment houses and the main house had it had been it's basically just been a single family house. Okay. As far as the is the parking. My wife and I are both handicapped. We don't have a car. We use PDRTA paratransit service, and they have both the small vans and they have big buses. And what we're concerned about, I don't know about the what you're planning to allow for the on-street parking, but right now from that power pole right at the edge of our property, that would be the northwest boundary of 500 West Pine Street, to the stoplight. Right now, there's no parking allowed on that stretch of probably 30, 40 feet. And in front of our house, we're concerned that if parking on the street is allowed, that we aren't going to be able to use the parking from the edge of our curb back to the northwest border of our property. And because they use both the big buses and the small buses, you know, we can't have like two parking spaces in front of 500 West Pine. And something else, like a month ago, I saw somebody blow that traffic sign. And if parking is allowed in front of the house and outside to let people drive, they come flying down from West Palmetto Street. It's almost like they're trying to see how fast they can go. They blow right through the intersection. And if you've got people parked on the street, how are you going to see somebody coming from the other down toward the nursing home? So that's the main thing. We have a handicap ramp, and it almost goes to the sidewalk. And like I said, I'm just concerned that if this is approved for the on-street parking, it's going to negatively affect our being able to access the buses. I don't know anything about the backyard. It's not anything, not in my business, but I just wanted to bring up these facts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Give me 1 moment. Thank you. Is there any questions for the applicant from board members at this time? Sir, what was your address? You said Time Street. I did
502 West
502. So you're directly adjacent on the western portion. And sir, your main concern is the parking.
Right.
Currently, you said there was no parking, but with this variance, it would allow parking. That's your concern?
Well, I didn't know just what the variance was. I mean, as far as the parking, I didn't know if it was going to be on-street parking or whether it was going to be limited to the parking in the pink house. It should be about two or more parking spaces in there, and I didn't know if it was going to be, if that was going to be enough, or whether you're going to need parking on the street, whether in front of the house or on the Worthy Street side.
Well, if we can ask city staff, as far as the city staff, could you help?
Yes,
We do
the ordinance requires off-street parking but because it really cannot be accommodated on the Worley Street parcel, he's just asking basically to have that waived, that requirement. And because there is on-street parking is legal in that, along that block, that could accommodate parking. But people would be parking there regardless. The variance doesn't affect whether people can or cannot park on the street.
So there is currently no parking. Is there currently no
There
parking?
is currently parking is permitted currently on the street. This does not affect whether it would be new or new parking or not.
I could see where they'd have ample parking on Warley Street, and he's on Pine Street,
Right.
adjacent. So, does that help answer your question? What she said, they already have parking there. There is parking.
Well, there's a no parking sign from the stop sign on West Pine Street, from stop sign to the edge of our property. There's no parking.
And this would not affect that at all.
I wish I'd have looked at Pine.
I would think that any parking, on-street parking would be in front of the Warley Street parcel anyway.
So regardless, there's parking there on the streets.
That's correct. This is not
Regardless.
affecting current parking areas.
Okay, so this variance would not affect that. You can park on there regardless. Is that what I'm
That's
understanding?
correct, yes.
But I'm still concerned that if on-street parking is allowed from near that intersection, that's going to negatively affect people being able, because whenever you pull up to that stop sign, and you got to wait for traffic down Worley Street or up Worley Street. And you've got like 2 or 3 or however many people parked on the street, you aren't going to be able to see this yahoo that's coming from down toward the nursing home whenever he's flying up toward West Palmetto Street. That's what I'm concerned about too.
Well, that will still be no parking. None of that will change.
So what you're saying is this wouldn't change any of the existing parking rules?
Correct.
Also, it would not affect the PDRTA.
No.
Is there a drop off point there? No. Okay.
No.
Okay.
But if it's marked no parking now, it'll remain no parking.
Thank you.
I'm very familiar with the area. There's not an official PDRTA stop, but what was just testified to was that they used PDRTA, the call service, where they call the handicap bus.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I
service. So they do need access in front of their home in order to access the PDRTA. But again, this variance has no effect on any of the existing parking rules.
Correct.
It's as I understand it, the variance is to have fewer parking spaces on the property than the code says they'll have.
That's correct. And if they had it, there was no requirement that people had to use it. If there was on-street parking available, a lot of people don't park in their driveway anyway.
So that situation is no different than it's been for the last 60 years.
Exactly.
Is there any other questions for the applicant? I mean, I'm sorry, for public witness.
What's
If
the
I
term?
could just make a suggestion, in front of the house, the 500 West Pine, there's that big yard, and if that yard, they were to put in like a circular drive, that would give them like 2 or 3 or however many parking spaces, and that would be, they would have to have the maintenance done on the yard. You know, they could have like a circular drive, and coming in off the street, go around to the front door, and come back out, or maybe even coming out on the Work Street side. Just a suggestion.
Very well suggested, sir. Is there any other questions? There being none, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Good night, sir. Anybody else would like to be heard? Come on up. I'm going to swear you in. Good evening, sir. All right, tonight, do you promise the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth? Thank you, sir. You may continue.
My name is Winfield Brown. I'm the president of my Park Neighborhood Association. We certainly appreciate.
Could you state your name? I'm sorry, for the record. Could you state your name?
Yes, Winfield Brown.
Winford Brown. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
I'm president of the Termite Park Neighborhood Association. We appreciate anyone that wants to improve our neighborhood. I'll just be honest, what bothered us at the beginning when we got the notice about the appeals is that it said it was priced as a 4-unit property, and then the property card said it was a single family home. But in doing some investigation and based on what was written, it has been a duplex for quite a while. So that was a concern that that was turned into something. Although legitimately duplexes are allowed in the neighborhood, we were concerned about a nice old home that way, but it's already that way, and discussion about what you were doing was very positive. So pleased with that. The only other concern had to do with parking, the variance of that parking. I really don't see 8 people, or if you're going to have 8 people in 2 units, I don't even see 4 people being able to get in that parking area behind Pine Street. But there is enough parking on Worley Street that I think that could accommodate, because there's on-street parking there. Now, on Pine Street, there is, if you drive up and down Pine Street, you'll see that there are a lot of those no parking from here to corner, no parking here and there. There's not a lot of parking on that street. So there may be 1 or 2 spots, but it would probably, depending on how diligent the person was parking, they would interfere with somebody being able to see what was going on. You see cars. So that was our other concern, was about parking. But depending on visit, I mean, that's a problem anywhere, is parking, regional parking. But I did want to come and express the thoughts of Termite Park.
Thank you, sir. Is there any, give us 1 second. Is there any questions for the witness?
Yeah, I've got a question. As you were speaking, a thought popped into my head, and I have no idea if this is even possible. In the case of handicapped residents in the neighborhood, is it possible to get sections, let's say, for example, in front of their home, designated as a no parking zone by the city? You know, it wouldn't be a permanent thing. It would be for those residents that are handicapped.
That's a good idea. I don't know the procedure to go have that done.
I'm gonna.
If it's a state street, I don't know. That would be different than a city street, though.
See what the city says.
We got staff number.
We got the staff.
Parking regulation that is adopted by ordinance through City Council. Pine Street in front of the gentleman's home, there's no parking permitted through there, so no.
Oh, so there's already no parking.
That's right.
On that section
Most
of Pine
of the
Street.
main thoroughfares, cross streets like Pine Street. I'm trying to think what else may be through there. Try to limit parking so that there's no traffic issues like we speak. But Worley, there is on-street parking.
Okay, because
So
Yeah,
Pine
because-
Street, no parking.
There's no
and
parking.
Warley Street.
That's right.
Okay, all right, we got it.
Worley Street's the on-street, so
That's
yeah,
correct.
and I'm on McQueen Street.
Yeah.
There's plenty of
That's right.
parking there too.
But that doesn't mean people won't park there.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, I got one more question for you. And also make sure.
Leave so soon.
It's all right. We enjoy talking to you. You said you were part of the Tim Rod
Right, I'm the
neighborhood
president of the Termite Park Neighborhood Association.
president. Okay. with you being the president, is as far as the association, any neighborhood, have they expressed a concern as far as negative towards you, towards this? Is it
Yes, because we were under the impression that it was a single family home, and then it says in here that it was praised as a 4-unit property. So we were saying, how did that happen? But like I said, the property card says it's a single family home residence on Park Avenue. I mean, Pine Street, 500 Pine Street. But at some point in the distant past, the upstairs of Pine Street was turned into a separate unit. I talked to someone who knew Ms. Fowler, and he said that it always was a rentable unit up there. And even before then, he said that the people that owned it before had a family member that they converted that to an efficiency or whatever, and that person stayed there. Then I guess the person died and then got rented out.
and this
That's
is
a
the
separate entrance and all that.
this is the one on Warley Street,
No, this is one on Pine Street.
facing the big one facing
Yeah.
Pine Street. Gotcha.
This has got a separate entrance.
And this is the home. I mean, in the past, has it been a lot of problems with it as far as they said break-ins and
Well, when it was occupied, there wasn't any problem. I can't. Now, the police already come to our meetings. They have not expressed any, they haven't told us any incidents that occurred, but sometimes we don't get all of it.
Okay.
But I do know we have a problem with drug use in some areas and vagrants and people that realize that a home is unoccupied, tend to go there, and if it's told they need a place to stay, they can get in, they will. As an editorial.
have y'all personally had any reports of such for that house?
Excuse me?
Have y'all personally had any reports of such people using it like you?
I mean, we have not. The police come to our meetings, but they have not reported that. But it would not be it would be likely that would certainly happen based on where it is.
Especially
And
if it
if
stays
they saw that
vacant.
it was unoccupied, I could see.
You've seen in the past.
I know that there are vacant houses in our neighborhood that homeless individuals go into because they need a place to stay.
all over the city.
All over the city. And I'm sure there's some drug use too.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions? Don't mean to hold you. Thank you so very much, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to be heard tonight regarding this issue?
Chairman, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I live in the neighborhood. I'm right around the block, and I'd like to add to the comments that were just made. I live on Queen Street. There were 3 or 4 other empty houses on Pine Street. A vagrant was living in one of them, and he burglarized my home. So that was about 3 years ago. So it is a problem on Pine Street. Now, what's really cool is at least 3 of those properties now have been fully renovated. I think one of them is now owned by the city. So it has been a problem.
The city could solve all these problems with the unlimited resources. That would be great. Thank you, Mr. Chico. Very well noted. Anybody else would like to be heard in regards to this? Okay, there being none, the chair would now entertain a motion from members of the board to either approve or deny the variance request.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
I move that we grant the request of the variance based upon the following findings of fact. That a variance from the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance will not be contrary to the public interest when, because of special conditions, literal enforcement of the provision will, in this individual case, result in an unnecessary hardship, in that adherence to the terms of the ordinance would result in the inability of the owner to use the building at 405 Worley Street as used under previous code. 2, that the spirit of the Unified Development Ordinance will be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done, because the use as proposed was historically in place prior to the current owner purchasing the property. 3, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this particular piece of property, namely the 2 structures were constructed 85 years ago at a time when setbacks were not taken into consideration. They have historically been utilized as a triplex and a single-family home. 4, that these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. Most lots of record have one principal structure on them. This one has 2 principal structures, a house and a multi-unit structure. 5, that because of these conditions, the application of the Unified Development Ordinance to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property by preventing the owner to use the building at 405 Worley Street as utilized under the previous zoning ordinance. 6, the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of this variance, because the structures have been in place since the 1930s, and 405 Worley Street has historically been used as a triplex.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chico. All right, we have a motion to grant. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor, said aye. The motion carries. The variance request is granted. And thank you so very much, sir. Y'all are more than welcome to stay or leave at y'all's convenience. Thank y'all for being here tonight, and thank y'all as well. Any other items on this evening's agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, there being none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
Go to the house.